Hey there, good people, and welcome back to the DNP podcast. I'm your host, Debo Agbede, and we are 1 week closer to the NFL season. I am so ready for football to get underway. This episode is going to be part one of my predictions for each division in the league, starting with the East and the West. So that's the NFC East, AFC East, NFC West, and the AFC West. This podcast is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so follow on those platforms and give an honest rating. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube so you can stay up to date with each upload. Now I'll start off with the NFC East, and the team I have in fourth place is the Dallas Cowboys. Now I'll start this section of the podcast off with a quote from Succession. Great show. Really recommend it if you haven't watched it already. From Mr. Logan Roy, in saying that they are not serious people. When you look at the situation of Micah Parsons, our contract still hasn't been resolved, and we're here 2 weeks away from the season, and they still haven't got their best defensive player signed. Like, it just makes me think that they're just not really about winning, in the long run, or winning when it matters. And I think that's always been the issue with the Dallas Cowboys, that they haven't really won, they've mattered, and they kind of let themselves stagnate. And when you're stagnating, when you're not moving forward, you're only moving one way, and that's backwards. And that's how I see the Dallas Cowboys going into next season. When I look at their run defense, which was 29th last year, and I look at it, they haven't really made any additions that fill me with confidence in terms of changing that. Their running offense is poor as well. They weren't that good last year, and then they let Rico Dowdle walk and brought in Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, and it's just like, are you going to give your full confidence in a fifth-round rookie, Jaden Blue? Like, I don't know if that's really enough to push him above where I've got them here. And the passing offense will be fine. Obviously, they brought in George Pickens. They still have CeeDee Lamb. Dak is back, but even last year when they had Dak Prescott, it wasn't as if they were competitive. When he went down, they were 3-4, well on their way to being 3-5 in that game, because he gets injured in, I believe, at least the second half in that Atlanta game. So the way I see it is just that they haven't done anything different. They're still the same old Cowboys. When I look at the other teams in the division, I just have more faith in them to be competitive and get wins, or at least more wins than the Dallas Cowboys. Because that Dak return is good. Obviously, having your starting quarterback is you want to have your full weaponry and your full arsenal going into a season. But even last year, if that run defense is still as porous as it was, I'm sure many remember that Week 2 game where the New Orleans Saints absolutely ran through them in their own building. And that's the Saints. It's not exactly a team that we're all looking at like, oh, they're an NFC contender. Even last year, they fell away inevitably. So I just don't see the Cowboys as a team that can, make much noise this season, or at least much noise on the field. All the noise that the Cowboys will bring will most likely be off the field. And even when looking at the head coaching move they made, they let Mike McCarthy's contract expire, and then they bring in his offensive coordinator, someone who was in his staff. Like, the culture is still going to be the same, in my opinion, and I just don't believe that even the way they hired him, in terms of not actually interviewing any of the top candidates, you've just let the Ben Johnsons of the world and the other top head coaching candidates in that search go, and you've just promoted someone from within, which your within wasn't as productive to begin with. So the way I see it, I just don't believe the Dallas Cowboys are going to be any higher than fourth in the NFC East this year. So third place in the NFC East, I have the New York Giants. Now, I'll be quite frank with you here. I think they're going to be so much better than what we initially thought. I just believe that when you have a defensive line that could wreck any game, you've got Dexter Lawrence, you've got Brian Burns, you've got Kayvon Thibodeaux. I just feel like there's just so much there in terms of being a competitive team and just staying in all the games. And when you look at what the head coach and GM are dealing with. Like, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane need to compete, need to be a team that doesn't just, have another top 5 pick and is just another non-factor in terms of being in the games. Like, they need to compete and they need to look credible, or else they're on the chopping block. And I believe when a team has that motivation, or at least when the people in charge have that motivation, there's an extra sense of urgency when they're in these games and over the course of a season that I just feel will get them to being third in the division and not the unfancied, bottom dwellers of the division. And even their free agency additions in terms of Paulson Debo and Javon Holland, I just think the defense as a whole will be quite, scary, and will, keep them in games they probably shouldn't be in. And I know they've obviously got a really tough schedule. Obviously, based on last year's winning percentage, they've got the hardest schedule in the league. So it's going to be a long old battle and a long old fight for them. But when you've got a defense like that and you've got a game changer on the offense in terms of Malik Neighbors, like, they will be in all the games they're not going to get blown out, or it'll be very seldom that they get blown out in any of their games this year. And obviously Russell Wilson's no slouch. Like, he's obviously not peak Russ. He's not, going to carry this team in any sense, but he won't be the reason they lose, in a sense. Like, even last year, like, that Steelers team did go to the playoffs. However, they didn't make much of a meal of it when they eventually got there, but they did get there. And not to say that the Giants are going to be a playoff team. Clearly, I don't have them as a playoff team here. I still have them in the third division. But they're going to win games. They're going to be a team that doesn't completely, falter and have themselves, looking at a top 5 pick, and they're going to be mock drafting by the time Halloween rolls around. They're going to be a team that, hey, we played the Chiefs real hard, or we gave the Eagles a tough out at home, sort of thing. Like, I just believe that the New York Giants have a good vibe around them as well. When you look at how Jackson Dart's doing it pre-season, like, they're going to be a team that has a look back at this season as like, hey, this is a good building block for what's to come. And, Brian Daboll was able to get Daniel Jones to the playoffs. Like, he doesn't all of a sudden become a bad coach. There's still a good coach in there that's able to, get more out of his team than not. So the way I look at the roster, the way I look at the team in general, I believe the Giants are going to look back on this season and say, hey, we didn't do too bad. And next year, when hopefully the schedule lines up a little more, that we can make a decent run at this thing and make a decent run into the playoffs. So yeah, third place for the New York Giants in 2025. Now, second place in the NFC East, I have the Washington Commanders. And you see that little P there? That means they're making the playoffs in my predictions. And when you have, as I said last week, tier 1 quarterback like Jaden Daniels, the sky's the limit. And I do obviously still do have them second place here, but they are going to be a better team than last year. And you look at the additions they made in Laramie Tunsil and Debo Samuel, that's going to add dimensions to their offense. And looking at their Monday night preseason game, like that little end around, Debo Samuel, obviously it's a preseason game, but he still got it. That end around went for 19 yards. Like, I saw the speeds. I saw, I'm sure a lot of people on social media, make those, oversized jokes of Debo Samuel, but there's a bulky guy that's going to get a lot of yards after the catch this year. And I think when you have a player like that in your offense, we've seen it with him in the San Francisco 49ers, that's going to have a big impact, and that's going to get them in those tougher games that they've got, this season. They're gonna get a good amount out of Debo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil in the offensive line as well. That is a big addition. So the Commanders' offense is still going to be as I would not say elite, but it's going to be really good, and it's going to win them a lot of games. And Jaden Daniels is going to get them out of a lot of tough situations that he was able to do last year. I think in terms of winning the division, I still have a bit of a question mark about their running game. Obviously, we've seen the news in the past week that they're looking to trade Brian Robinson, and well, is Austin Eckler and a 7th round pick going to be the charge in a running game for this team? I don't think it's division winning, especially when you look at who the winners of this division have in their backfield. It just seems that there's going to be that bit lacking in terms of being a division winner and a top contender again in the NFC East, because even last year when it came to making the NFC Championship game, things had to break their way, and obviously when you're a team in that situation, when you're 3-14 the year before, things are going to have to break your way to make a deep run. And I believe that the people in the front office understand that, hey, things broke our way in terms of getting to the NFC Championship game, so there are additions that need to be made, and things that need to be adjusted in terms of making the extra push and staying there, because the Detroit Lions defense isn't going to be completely wildered and have all the injuries they did last year. That was a freak circumstance, so you're not gonna go into Detroit this year and just blitz them like it did last year. There's going to be an extra level of competition that you've got to be prepared for, and when you're looking at that sort of being the situation that you're dealing with, that we're a good team, and obviously we've got the quarterback that we've sorted that for the next 10 to 15, but in terms of winning the division, there's still a team above them that is well enough away from them for me to say that they're the second team in this division. So second place, but could they trade for a Trey Hendrickson? Like, they've obviously added Von Miller. I still think that pass rush isn't enough as it stands, but it needs that sort of big move of getting last year's sack leader, or obviously they were linked with Myles Garrett a lot before he ends up signing that big deal in Cleveland, but that's what I think it would take for them to push up and fully challenge the Philadelphia Eagles in winning this division. So I guess that leads me on to my next one. Yes, winning this division, I have the Philadelphia Eagles, and obviously making the playoffs as division champions. And I think you can easily say that they are the class of the NFC East, making the Super Bowl 2 times in the past 3 years. That's obviously a mean feat, and just the roster that they have. Like, you look at their defensive line and Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and all the dishes there, and then you look at the backfield, you've got Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. Like, there's just so much of this team that, or at least the important players in this team, are back again for another year. And when you consider that they haven't made those big losses and those big players leaving that a team in their situation usually does. Like, the Chiefs had to trade Tyreek Hill, and were able to reinvest those resources appropriately. And the Eagles, in their sense, haven't had to deal with that sort of game-changing loss in their team as of yet. So when you're looking at all the players returning, that offensive line is still the same. At least for them, thankfully, Landon Dickerson wasn't too serious an injury for them that he's not going to miss the season. So, like, when you're able to bring back all your guys in all the sense, and AJ Brown still there, Devontae Smith, Saquon taken care of, which is obviously something that the Dallas Cowboys aren't able to do, or aren't willing to do, that the Eagles just show themselves to be the team in the NFC East, and the team that is kind of maintaining all their guys and keeping them happy. And even look at their defensive draft and able to get Jahad Campbell and at the linebacker position, and you obviously taking care of Zach Bourne as well. It just gives me the faith and the confidence that this is just a team that's going to be thereabouts for a very long time, or at least for the next couple of years, because I just don't think any other team in the division made that sort of big move that is able to usurp the Eagles as the team in the NFC East. So that's the way I have the cookie crumbling. I mean, obviously they're just that team in my opinion. So Eagles at number 1, NFC East. That's it. Yeah, put down in the comments if you disagree, but the way I see it, I think the Eagles are just number 1. Let's move on to the AFC East, and who I have in 4th place this division is the New York Jets. Now, I will again start this by saying I think the New York Jets, at least in terms of a cultural reset, will be reminiscent of the 2021 Detroit Lions in Dan Campbell's first year. Like, it's not going to be great in terms of winning. Like, they're going to lose a fair amount of their games, and they're not going to be in any form of playoff race again, 4th place in the division, so I definitely don't see that being the case. But I do think they're going to grind out a lot of games, and teams facing the New York Jets the week after, you're going to feel them. You're going to feel the effect of their line of scrimmage play. Like, they've still got Quincy Williams, they've got Quincy Williams and James Sherwood, and like, they have good pieces on the defense, and they are going to be a team that you will have to grind through, and you will have to feel. You're gonna have to feel them, basically. So I do feel like the New York Jets will, despite losing, at least internally, will feel okay. We're making some headway here in terms of being a team that's respected and respectable. It's obviously going to require quite an old school style of offense in terms of winning games, because obviously Justin Fields is a quarterback, and where his strength lies is running the ball, and you've got Breece Hall and you've got Braylon Allen in that backfield. So it feels like they're going to be a running team, and they're going to have to be a running team to be competitive, because Justin Fields, in terms of throwing the ball, still hasn't developed in the way you would have hoped by this point in his career. So I think they're going to be a team that isn't able to stretch the fields, and obviously when you've got a Garrett Wilson, that is what you would hope to do, but they're going to be a team that heavily relies on the running game. And when you even look at what they've invested in draft resources in recent years, you're looking at Membu in this year's draft, 1st round, Fashanu last year, 1st round, Titman the year before in 2nd round, and then Vera Tucker as well was a 1st round pick. So they're just going to be a team that is gonna pound you, and you're gonna feel the effect of the New York Jets. You're gonna be better than the New York Jets. They're gonna simply be 2nd best in most of the games that they have on their schedule, but they're going to make you work for the win that you get. But you will get most of the time. The New York Jets are going to be on the losing end, but they're going to make it tough for whatever team goes to MetLife, or any team that faces them in their home stadium. So they're going to have a culture reset, and the New York Jets are going to be a bit more respectable than they have in recent years, with obviously Aaron Rodgers being quite a newsworthy candidate. They're not going to be in the news for those sorts of I guess not wild stuff, but just in your face and just being a disappointment. They're not going to disappoint you in any sense, because I guess you're not really expecting much. So 4th place, New York Jets. In 3rd place in the AFC East, I have the Miami Dolphins, and mainly because the vibes in this team are just all off. Obviously, you've got Tyreek, who's still in the building, despite very obviously and clearly saying that he wanted to leave. Obviously wasn't very happy at the end of last season in that game against the Jets. He seemingly hasn't, fully reintegrated back, in terms of, Tua in the press conference saying that he's obviously got work to do to, regain the trust of his teammates. And even in a presser, Tyreek himself was like, Devon Achan's not really a red zone back or someone you want in a short yardage situation, which, is a fair statement to make. But is that something you say publicly to, for that to world know? Is probably something that's better kept in-house. It just seems like the Miami Dolphins, culture, obviously culture's a bit of a buzzword, but it is just, the way to define how, accountability is led in in the team, and the fact that they've even let Jalen Ramsey go and Johnny Smith. Jalen Ramsey, who was very clearly not going to be back with the team, and for clear reasons. It's just that I don't have a good feeling around the Miami Dolphins, and I feel like even when you look at what Jalen Ramsey is left in terms of their cornerback depth, like their CB1 Storm Duck, like Kade Ko, who's out for the year, unfortunately. So the team just doesn't fill me with any confidence, and I just don't believe that the Miami Dolphins have, competition in them anymore. Like, even when they were a team that was making the playoffs, like, they obviously didn't get a playoff win, and they weren't beating teams that were even on their level or better than them. Like, they were pretty much a flat track bully in terms of just beating the teams they should beat and losing to the teams that they should compete with or are better than them. So there's just not much in the Miami Dolphins for me to believe that they're going to be a team that does any better than this, and is quite, in my opinion, clearly the third best team or the third best roster in this division. I do have them better than the New York Jets simply because they have Tua Tagovailoa, and when you considering him or Justin Fields, it seems like a pretty easy pick in terms of quarterback play. But again, Tua needs to stay fit for them to even finish, third or above. And given Tua's injury history, that's not a likely thing to happen. So if Tua goes down for any reason, I'll be honest, I might put them even in fourth place. But as the rosters are currently constructed, the Dolphins are my third best team and the third place team in the AFC East. Second place in the AFC East, I have the New England Patriots with a playoff spot. I think the business they've done in free agency was really good. Again, Milton Williams, Robert Spillane, Stephon Diggs, Harold Landry III. I just think that is very reminiscent or similar to what the Washington Commanders did last year, bringing in obviously Jaden Daniels and then the Bobby Wagners of the world, the Zach Ertz. Just good veterans to have around the building to bring, I guess in the Patriots case, bring back the high standards and the high level quality in the Patriot way. And obviously not the same way that Bill Belichick was doing it, but in Mike Vrabel's way, who himself is just able to get the most out of the teams he's had in the past. Like, when you look back and you think Ryan Tannehill was got a team to the 1 seed, or the Tennessee Titans went into Arrowhead for an AFC Championship game, like, you look back at that rosters and you're like, whoa, this team in the worlds of your Lamars, and obviously Josh Allen hadn't fully come through yet, but you're still looking at high-level competition, and the Tennessee Titans, under Mike Vrabel's stewardship, were able to make AFC Championship games. I just think that he's just the type of coach that can 2x, maybe not 3x, but definitely bring the New England Patriots, I guess, back, in a sense, to being a competitive team on a year-on-year basis. So I think they're going to be a team that, I guess, not shocks, because I think a lot of people are touting the New England Patriots to be a team that, competes and is a much more serious outfit than they have been in years past, since obviously Tom Brady left. And it's just a team that's going to go into next year with a bit more verve, a bit more of a, an edge that they probably did have. Even looking at preseason and training camp, and Mike Vrabel's getting involved in scraps, or getting himself bloodied, and that sort of hard-nosed, Boston attitude that I feel like is going to seep into the Patriots roster and get them a lot more wins than they have in years past. And you look at Josh McDaniels coming back, and he was able to get a rookie Mac Jones to the playoffs, and Drake May is a much more talented quarterback, at least with what he's able to do on the field in terms of the throws he's able to make, than a Mac Jones. And from the clips we've seen in training camp, Drake May looks good. And I think Drake May is going to, with the weapons he's got now, and the Trevion Henderson in the backfield as well, and obviously Stephon Diggs, like, the New England Patriots are going to be a serious outfit next year, and it's going to be a great step for them to, keep, moving forward this year. So for 2026, 2027, 2025 is going to be a year that the New England Patriots look back on and it's like, we're back now. Well, not fully back, not dynasty level back, but definitely we can expect ourselves to be playing in January and hopefully for years to come, February. So, the way I see it, that's it. Second place in the AFC East is New England Patriots. And your AFC East champions for 2025 in my predictions is the Buffalo Bills. And to put it simply, when you've got Josh Allen, who's quite simply the best player in the whole division, especially at that quarterback position, I just feel like the Buffalo Bills, there's no real changes made in a year-on-year basis, but they've just been that standard, that sort of, when you've got Josh Allen there, that's a team that's going to be thereabouts in January and for their sakes February, because that's really the step that's yet to be taken for them. Again, no big losses. They've obviously brought in Joe Bosa. They've got a couple of other defensive additions in Ogunjobi and Hoyt that have suspensions going into the year. So it's going to be Joe Bosa from the start. And, given his injury record, you're going to hope that he stays fit, because obviously the Von Miller addition they made a couple of years back didn't have the impact that they were fully hoping for. And when you're competing with that guy in Kansas City, you really need a pass rusher that's able to finish and get him down and get some sacks and put them on the back burner, because when the Bills have needed to put the Chiefs on the back burner in years past, they haven't been able to do so. And you look back at the 13-second game, even last season when they're in Arrowhead and they take the lead and they just, when Patrick needs to score, he scores. So it's going to have to be on you to stop him, and the Bills in years past haven't been able to do so. So this is a team that's not really defined by what they do in the regular season. Like I don't know how many, but like they've got a good streak in this AFC East, and I believe that continues given the players they've got, but it's all about the playoffs for them, and we'll see if they're able to do that. But in terms of the AFC East, I think they're still by far and away the number one team. So there we are. There's my AFC East predictions. Moving on to the NFC West, and fourth place in the NFC West, I have the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I'll admit that I do think this is a team that could easily over-deliver on this prediction, but there's just a lot of unknown quantities when it comes to this team. Like on the defensive end, like they've obviously had Darius Williams, who they drafted last year, go out with an injury, so didn't exactly play much. Can he be that big edge rusher for them? They brought in Josh Sweat from Philadelphia. Can he be the number one, pass rusher on a team that competes? Obviously, he wasn't number one, but he was effective for the Eagles last year in their Super Bowl run. So can he go to a team like Arizona with his former defensive coordinator as head coach and Jonathan Gannon and make that big impact? I don't know. I really don't know. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. was the first receiver taken, and he kind of got overshadowed by Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors last year. So can he, take that mantle on and be that number one receiver that is able to, be that, not safety blanket, but that target for Kyler Murray and take the mantle and be a, big yard getter and big red zone threat for them? That he was able to get the touchdowns last year, but in terms of the volume, he kind of under-delivered. So can he take that step up and be the game-changing receiver that the Cardinals really need to be a better team? Because I'll admit that I do have this division running really close from 1 to 4. So there's not much between the Cardinals here and who I have winning the division. So there's definitely an upside to this team that at this moment in time I can't really bank on, but is there, and the potential is there. It does just fall on, Kyler Murray having a consistent 17-game season. And if he doesn't, there's real questions to be asked, because this is year 7 of Kyler now, I believe. So drafted in 2019, first overall. So there's, a lot more that needs to be seen with him, or else, wow, there's gonna be maybe a quarterback change. And when you're looking at next year's draft, there are options there. So if Kyler isn't able to fully deliver, then his time in Arizona may be up. So there's just a lot more to be done, and I think there's obviously that capability. Obviously, a lot of people love him for fantasy purposes, so he just needs to be able to convert that fantasy production that a lot of people like and convert it into wins. And if the wins come, then obviously the Cardinals are going to be a team that we see at least competing for a playoff spot. But the way I see it now, I just can't put too much stock into it. It's a stock that if you're a risk taker, that's a stock you can invest in, but as I sit here, I'm not willing to take the risk on the Arizona Cardinals. In third place in the NFC West, I have the Seattle Seahawks. Now, it was a lateral move going from Geno to Darnold. I don't really see much difference between the quarterbacks here that, takes the level of the Seahawks, who were a 10-win team last year. So, again, this is a strong division, and there's not much between 4 to 1. So I'd come not with hesitation, but with little of okay, the Seahawks have the defense that is strong and have the players there that can take this team from a 10-win team and maybe 11, or could obviously go down to 7 with the teams around them getting wins off them, which obviously with certain teams in the division did have injury faults, and otherwise in other years wouldn't have been wins for this Seattle team. But obviously again, rid of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and kind of putting your faith in a JSN who can take that mantle. Obviously, a Ohio State receiver, they don't tend to fail when they get into the NFL. It's obviously a case of Cooper Kupp. Is he able to bring that semblance of what he was a couple of years ago to this Seattle team? Obviously now back in his home state, at least, is that the extra motivation that is able to make him a very solid number 2 that can take this team forward and not backward like I have them here, because they were second last year and now third in the division. Obviously, they have made a change in offensive coordinator, bringing in Clint Kubiak, who in that aforementioned Cowboys Saints game did really impress, and in that early season did really, give an indicator oh, hold on, coming from that Kyle Shanahan tree is got a very exciting, run scheme that can make a Kenneth Walker and a Zach Charbonnet really effective in an offense. So I definitely see the Seahawks team also with Mike McDonald, the head coach, and a defense that still has Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon and Leonard Williams, a lot of strong contenders there that is able to make noise and get wins. I just think that this is a tough division that does cannibalize each other in terms of getting those 12 to 13 wins. That it's going to be a very tight race going into the end of the year between all 4. In all honesty, or the 4th team will, in the Cardinals as I have them here, won't. They'll just be 1 or 2 games short in that final week to really have a chance of making the playoffs. But Seahawks in 3, but in other divisions I would rank them higher, because I do see this is a good outfit in the NFL. Now, number 2 in the NFC West, I've got the San Francisco 49ers. Bang, bang, Niner gang, as I know too many Niners fans in my life. But I'll be honest, I do think that this is a team that obviously was sorting out the Brock Purdy deal and bringing Robert Saleh back. There are good vibes and good things coming from San Francisco. So it's not a team that's going to be as faltering as they were last year. Obviously, that is depending on injuries to the Christian McCaffreys and your Fred Warners and the like. So it's going to need players staying fit, and that is kind of my big concern with the San Francisco 49ers, because obviously the wide receiver depth is an issue now with Brandon Ayuk still coming back from his ACL. Kyle Shanahan saying that he doesn't really know when he's going to return, but even week 6 was kind of the earliest week that he gave for a possible return. So it's going to be a lot on the shoulders of a Ricky Pearsall, because even Jawan Jennings, who does seem to be practicing, is seeking a better deal and did ask to be looking for a trade. So even then, there's an element of question marks when it comes to the wide receiver depth, because Debo's gone now. So you really are looking at Ricky Pearsall as being the guy that's able to take the mantle on and be fit, which he wasn't able to be last year, even apart from the gunshots incident he was in, that thankfully he is able to be a part of training camp and be a part of practice. But again, there are question marks with the weaponry being at its maximum for the San Francisco 49ers. I do have them second above the Seahawks, simply because based on last year, they do have the easiest schedule in the league. So there is a team that maybe will overperform what their roster is capable of. But in terms of the roster, there is a lot of turnover. You lost Greenlaw, you lost Hufanga, you let Debo go. It's just a team that, in terms of personnel, it seems like it's more of a retool year, and they're not going to fully kick on and be back in the Super Bowl like they were 2 years ago, or be a consistent championship game contender. Like, I feel like it's a year break, especially with Brock Purdy getting his deal, and you kind of have to have an extra year of managing the roster with a $50 million quarterback now. So I think they'll impress in a way, in terms of there'll be players that come through that are able to make an impact, but I just feel in terms of winning the division, and I don't have them making the playoffs, it's just going to be a tough one for me to fully back. So second place, San Francisco 49ers. And number 1, winning the division, I have the Los Angeles Rams. Yes, making the playoffs, of course. Look, here's a team that was 1 win away from making the NFC Championship game, and that was to the Philadelphia Eagles in a snow game. Now, who knows what would have happened if there was no snow and they were just playing the regular game, where they were able to pass the ball as they happily would. I just think that this is a team that is on the up, that obviously made their playoff push last year, making the divisional round, handling the Minnesota Vikings. It's just I have good vibes and good feelings around this team in terms of Puka Nacua. Obviously, the offensive line is as good as it was. The defense really came on strong last year, and you've got young pieces in that defense like a Jared Verse and a Braden Fisk and a Byron Young that will only get better and will only improve on what they were able to do last year. And then Devontae Adams in over Cooper Kupp. That's a real sort of 1A, 1B tandem with Puka Nacua in the receiving game. And then you have Kyron Williams in the backfield, who is obviously a touchdown machine. Again, very effective for those fantasy football owners out there. So I just think the Rams are a team that is just able to, maintain their role as the top team in the division, especially when you've got a Sean McVay who has, been there and done that, in a sense of making these, long playoff runs, and they're just kind of a consistent high floor with the Los Angeles Rams, which I just think they have the highest floor in this division, which is why I've got them, as NFC West champions. Obviously, there are the concerns with Matthew Stafford and his back. Like, he did go back into practice recently. You saw the Rams social media putting out that video. So, as long as Matthew Stafford is fit, this prediction will remain the same. But I would say it is contingent on his fitness and his availability over the year, because the backup being Jimmy Garoppolo, as we've seen over the years, especially since he left the San Francisco 49ers, that that he's not a great starter in this league and in this division. The big reason is the quarterback play. And, Matthew Stafford being the best quarterback in this division, obviously being voted a tier 1 quarterback by many NFL personnel and the 5th best. Like, as long as he's fit, I think the Rams are going to come out on top. But if he isn't fit, I will say that I'll put that caveat in that the 49ers would be my pick as the NFC West champions. But Stafford being fit, best quarterback in the division, Rams are your NFC West champions in 2025. On to the AFC West now, and in 4th place, I've got the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, first of all, I've got to say this is the best 4th place team in the league in terms of what they've got on the roster. I think when you've got Max Crosby on one side, and you've got Geno Smith at quarterback, who is one of the best players in evading pressure or performing under pressure, which he was under immense pressure last year with the issues Seattle had on their O-line. Then you've got, obviously, Ashton Genty in that backfield. And I know some people say, he was only playing in the Mountain West and playing for Boise State. And this is a top-level running back, and I think he's going to make an instant impact in this league. And it's another team that has a cultural reset coming in with Pete Carroll and John Spytek joining the fray. And obviously you've got the allure of Tom Brady in the ownership level, and clearly has an influence and is advising personnel decisions for the Vegas Raiders. So I think this is a team that, again, because this division is just going to be such a gauntlet, it's going to be so tough, but they'll get their wins. They'll be minimum 8 wins. I'll put that out there now, and will be the best team out of all the, I guess, bottom feeders, if you want to call them, in their respective division in this league, because wow, like, the O-line's decent. Got Colton Miller wrapped up. To see Jackson Powers-Johnson as well. To add to it, Jacoby Myers is one of the most underrated receivers in the league. I just feel like the Raiders, they just have a good team and a respectable team, which again will get more wins than they arguably should. So, in my opinion, that should put them as a well-positioned for the future. Obviously, not in terms of this year. Feel like the competition's just too tough, and they're going to find themselves, I guess, chasing the pack, so to speak, or at least, behind the pack for sure. So, yeah, that's the way I see it. I think the Raiders will be fine going forward. Obviously, Geno's not going to be a long-term option, but he's going to be a good option for the time being in terms of at least showing competition and showing competitiveness in each game going into this season. So they're my 4th place team in the AFC West. In 3rd place in the AFC West, I've got the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I say this knowing what Jim Harbaugh has done in terms of getting his teams to improve on a year-on-year basis. Obviously, saw it with the 49ers in his career, doubling their win total in his first year, or even doing more than that, and making Stanford a respectable college program even before that. But I just think in terms of the moves they've made in this offseason, there hasn't really been that, level raiser. in my opinion. Obviously, we'll wait and see what their rookies are able to do, but considering the Rashawn Slater injury and being out for the year, that really is a bit of a killer for them in terms of competing with the teams I've got above them in this division. And I just feel like, in terms of the offensive weaponry, the other teams are more dynamic in that sense. And we're seeing an issue with Najee Harris and his eye, seemingly, and hasn't really been involved in the preseason. And you're kind of putting that all on Amari and Hampton as your first round pick to kind of take that up a notch in terms of your running game to what Gus the Bus and J.K. Dobbins were able to do for you last year. It just seems as if there's, a level to go which they haven't really gone this summer, at least in this off season. So I just believe, with regards to the Los Angeles Chargers, that it's just not enough, in my opinion, to make the playoffs, at least in this year, because the other teams have strengthened, and this is a really competitive conference in all aspects. So I just don't think it's enough for me. I know, obviously, Justin Herbert's a well-favoured quarterback in terms of what he's able to do on the field, but I'm just not sure about the personnel around him to see the Chargers as a playoff team in this year. So I just feel that there's more dynamism that other teams have, which the Chargers currently lack. So that's why I have them third place in the AFC West. Second place in the AFC West, I have the Denver Broncos, and with a playoff spot to boot. This is the second year of Bo Nix in that Sean Payton offense, and he seemingly had a great understanding of the scheme last year and is only going to get better. He's clearly proven that they didn't reach for him with that 12th overall pick last year, and he really is a quarterback that can, take a team at least to the playoffs and, with room to grow. So I do believe that, especially with the moves that they made this offseason and strengthening a strength, because last year that Broncos defense led the league in sacks, and they've now added a Greenlaw, a Nufung, Jade Barron in that first round, in addition to the PS2s and the Nick Bonitos that they already have in their team. I just think when you strengthen a strength like that, it's only going to get better, and it's only going to be a real problem for the teams that they'll have to face this year. Not only did they improve on the offense, they also added the dynamism in to their offensive weaponry in terms of Evan Ingram as the tight end now, RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins as their two running backs to really, improve on that running game that they had last year, because, Jaleel McLaughlin, Estime, Javonte Williams, it wasn't what you would hope for if you're a Broncos fan, but now you can see what was used in that area of the field to say that, okay, we can now supplant our sophomore quarterback now to be a real player in the higher echelon of the AFC. I just think, especially with Sean Payton and what he's been able to do with teams in the past, like, not many would have thought that the Broncos would have made the playoffs last year, myself included. And I think he's able to get more out of less, and now he has more, so he should easily be able to do more. I'm just not sure that the roster has, the experience at the minute to beat out the team who I have number one in the division, but I can easily say that this is a team that's going to, that's going to be thereabouts going into January, and again, will be a tough out because of having that quite game-changing defense alongside an offense that's going to be able to make plays when they need to. Not even mention Cortland Sutton as the wide receiver one. This is a Denver team that's going to be serious and going to be talked about for the latter stage of the season. So Not enough to beat out team number one, but definitely enough to keep it close going into the late stage of the year. And that leaves first in the AFC West. I've got the Kansas City Chiefs for what would be their 10th straight division title. Come on, like 9 in a row as of now. I think Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, all the pieces that have been there and have been part of at least the past few years are still there. And Mahomes is the king of the AFC West. And I could only see, based on the additions of Josh Simmons in the first round, like he would only drop to the Chiefs as a result of injuries in college. So this is someone who easily would have been in that top echelon of first round linemen, but was able to drop to the Chiefs, and they can only be thankful. And that makes the O-line definitely more formidable, gives Mahomes a real left tackle in that spot, and I can easily say that Mahomes is going to maintain what the Chiefs have been, and whether it's in the way they did it last year of just grinding out the wins when they can late on, or being the light show they were early in his career, the Chiefs are just going to be there and thereabouts in terms of Super Bowl contention and AFC contention, and for sure AFC West champions. The return of Rashee Rice as well from his ACL injury, and from what it looks like at the moment, he's going to be there and available for the start of the season. So at least they're able to start the season with their full complement of weapons, and you've got Xavier Worthy in his second year, and Hollywood Brown's back for another year. Just think that that offense is still going to be like formidable, and is going to be a problem when it comes to actually defeating the Chiefs. Like they were still able to make it to a Super Bowl even when many wouldn't have fancied them as that good a team, and only the Eagles were able to put the work on them in that way. In when you're looking at all the other teams in the league, like bar the Eagles, I think the Chiefs are still the best team in the league. And when you've got that guy calling plays on the sideline and Mahomes on the center, it's just going to be that team that's there at the end of the year. Like, at least as we sit here, obviously can easily be proven wrong, but it's tough to see otherwise. I think one area that can be improved on or isn't at the top level is the running back position. Obviously, Pacheco wasn't able to stay fit last year. If he's able to stay fit this year, it is a good player, but not at that high level. Definitely not a game changer, definitely not a game breaker, which is probably what this team is missing, at least in the running game. And that's very, very much an important part of playing. But as I sit here, I can't really see any other team pipping them in this AFC West division to the division title, which again would be a 10th straight, a decade of dominance for the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's the way I have the AFC West, and that's it for the second episode of the DNP podcast. Thanks for joining. Getting here to the end. Obviously, like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you're listening on those. Give an honest rating as well. And part one of my predictions done. Tune in next week for part two for all the other divisions in the NFL. And I'll see you next week. Adios.